Live from the Coppel Chevrolet GMC studios, this is The Show on Omaha's ESPN Radio, AM 590.
Thanks for tuning in this afternoon. Join the conversation at AM590ESPNradio.com. Facebook, Twitter, and email all available there at AM590ESPNradio.com. Threw out the question earlier, scale of 1 to 10, how concerned are you about the Husker defense? Now the spring game is come and gone, and we're joined by Josh Harvey of Big Red Report, BigRedReport.com. Josh, I'll ask you, how concerned are you for this defense headed into the fall?
Well, a couple things, I guess, bothered me in the beginning. It looked like they were really struggling to get any pass rush. Both teams, those first couple series, seemed to get better as the game went on. I did like what I saw from the linebacker position, really on both sides. You can tell that they're a lot faster in that group. But I also know there were some breakdowns, missed tackles. I know there was some missed defensive assignments after talking to some people. And so I guess my concern level really doesn't change compared to what it was going into the game. I think this is a young defense. I think it's going to be a situation where the offense is going to really have to bail them out a lot in the fall. And I think the defense is going to be a group that, you know, at times they're going to make a lot of plays and they're going to look like world beaters because of their athleticism and speed. And I think there's going to be times, too, when they get just downright confused and they're out of position.
Well, that was something that Rick Kaczynski singled out after the game, that it wasn't so much about guys lining up in the wrong spot or not necessarily having their gap fits right, but the fact of the matter was that at least along the D-line, he didn't see enough guys flying around even after the snap of the ball, regardless of where they were lined up.
Yeah, I thought Tim Beck made a nice statement, and I kind of put it towards the defensive side too. Then Tim Beck said, you know, he really liked what he saw out of Tommy Armstrong because even though he was making mistakes, he was flying around and trying to do good things, and you know, the effort was there. And I'm not saying the defensive line the effort wasn't there, but you know, the mistakes they were making and the struggles that they were having, it wasn't necessarily, you know, it wasn't like they were, you know, overshooting their gas and whatnot. They were struggling to get, you know, position and whatnot. And I do think part of that is because the offensive line, I think, is pretty good this year. I think it's a lot deeper this year as well, and so that could be, you know, part of it. But that defensive line is obviously very young, and you could tell it on Saturday that they really struggle at times.
And how important is it going to be to make sure that they get healthy? Because they had 11 guys in all on scholarship sitting out of this thing, whether they were being held out or they literally couldn't go. That's a lot of people that they've got to get right in the next couple of months.
Yeah, I think so. And I think Bo, I don't think they're that concerned because I think they felt like they had a really good spring, a very good learning, a good spring, you know, in the classroom, a good spring on the football field. And so I don't think you look at it and go, there's any injuries maybe besides Thad Randall that's going to be a constant injury this fall. I think everybody will be healthy by this summer. And so I don't know how concerned about it they are, but I'm definitely agreeing with you. They need to be completely healthy when they hit the fall because they're going to need about everybody.
Josh Harvey of Big Red Report, BigRedReport.com. You can follow him on Twitter for Husker updates at Josh Harvey Scout. And, Josh, I mean, I know you and I have talked about this a bunch, and I've beaten this drum to death. This coaching staff, in my mind, has got to take a hard look at what they've got, all these athletes, all these young, inexperienced athletes, and come up with a way to tweak this defense and get them on the field in position to make plays, whether that means limiting the playbook, whether that means paring it down, dumbing it down, whatever you want to call it. I think they've got to look at ways that they take advantage of these guys and not necessarily just bury them, you know, earlobes deep in Bo Pelini's game plan. Any chance that actually happens? Because Bo Pelini has said steadfastly he's not changing anything about anything.
You know, here's the thing, though, Michael. The more and more I've listened to Bo, it sounds like last year a lot of their struggles were because they didn't have that athleticism. And Bo's mentioned it a couple times. Hey, sometimes you just got to go out there and you got to make a play. And we weren't doing that last year. And so sometimes I'm wondering if it wasn't necessarily the scheme, that it was just they were missing the Joes. They were missing the athletes. And I wonder if, you know, if the scheme, how the scheme is going to look with a different, you know, type of player on this roster next year. And I think when you look at it, that's the type they have. They have different type of players, not just at the linebacker position. I think the secondary is pretty normal and pretty comparable to what they had last year. But I think up front, even though they weren't getting any pass rush, there's a lot more speed up front. There's the defensive ends are leaner. And so I wonder, how much he's really going to have to change his system, and if he doesn't change, if it will be better just because of the different personnel.
Josh, on the positive side, who on that defense flashed to you? Anybody?
Well, Jason Anchor started off really slow the first couple series. I thought he got better as the day went on. Jared Afalava played pretty well from the linebacker spot. I thought the secondary, looked pretty much like they were last year. They did have some blown assignments, especially the white team. But I thought overall I thought the secondary and Jared Afalava and Anchor were probably the guys for me that looked pretty decent on defense.
Yeah, Zaire Anderson was the one guy that I saw that I thought demonstrated the kind of speed that I was looking for. You see a guy that can close, a guy that can get there, especially sideline to sideline. We saw the importance of that with Levante David and the way that he was just a vacuum cleaner in that second level of the defense because of his sideline to sideline speed.
Yeah, he's definitely got the speed. I know that there was a few blown assignments by him, and I also know I think fans probably I think a lot of fans probably got pretty pumped up by his little drill they did where he was actually able to get to the running back. He did have a few missed assignments, but it looked like his knee is good to go. It looks like speed-wise he is there, and he looked a lot different in the spring game compared to a couple weeks ago when we got to watch that first practice when he had that big knee brace on. He looked a little slower then, and so he definitely looks like he's taken some strides and got healthier.
Talking here to Josh Harvey at Big Red Report, BigRedReport.com. And, while you saw some of the things in the defense that you expected to see, the offense looked good pretty much on all fronts. Even Ron Kellogg was crazy efficient. All the quarterbacks looked pretty sound. And I felt like you maybe learned a thing or two about some of the depth at the skill positions, wide receiver and running back especially.
Yeah, that wide receiver position is I'm ready to deem them the best in the Big Ten. I really honestly think they are. I don't know if they got that the best wide receiver in the Big Ten, but talent-wise, up and down, it's there. And I was, you mentioned the running back position. I was really impressed with King Frazier and his effort. I've always thought that kid was going to be probably better than the average walk-on just because he did have a couple offers coming out of high school. I was really impressed with Jake Long, too. I didn't watch him just as a receiver. I watched him as a blocking tight end, and I thought he had a really nice day. And I'm the tight end position I'm not nearly as worried about as I was going into that game.
Well, and it just looks, and this is going to sound oversimplified, but it looks to me like this offense only really has one off-season priority, and that's find a way to limit the turnovers, because if they can eliminate some of those turnovers, those costly mistakes, and giving up possessions, I think they're going to be in every game they play this year.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I mean, there was games where multiple turnovers turned into double-digit points, and even if they can just eliminate the turnovers and average maybe over the course of the season 4 or 5 more points a game, you're talking about really good things for this offense. And I think they're really close, and I think they should be with a fourth-year quarterback and with the experience they have up front on the offensive line. There's no excuse for the turnovers that they had last year, and they definitely will be less acceptable this year.
I'm of the mind they need to design some early offensive series for Tommy Armstrong in the non-conference part of the schedule when they're going through these cupcakes, not waiting until they're ahead by 30, but actually getting him in when the game's on the line. What do you think?
I can see it both ways. I would agree with that. I've seen teams do that. I've also seen, I've also heard Tim Beck say, hey, the most important thing is we win. And I can see this Husker fan base, getting Tommy Armstrong work and it costing them a game possibly, how mad the Nebraska fan base is. Tim Beck did bring up a nice point a couple weeks ago. He said, in Nebraska, we probably, because they're deeper, because of the walk-ons and whatnot, the second team, the third-string quarterback, they get just as much work as the starter in practice. And no, you cannot simulate, 80,000 fans screaming at you the same in the practice. But at least these guys are ahead of a lot of other places across the country where, their second-team quarterback doesn't get as much work in practice. And a lot, there's a lot of teams every year where it's, hey, this guy has no experience, but he's going to be the starter. So sometimes I wonder if fans at least think that, forget about, that it's not like they're playing dual threat or they're playing two quarterbacks everywhere else as well. But I agree with you. I mean, I'd like to see him get some work, But I also agree with Tim Beck. As long as it doesn't cost you a win.
Well, and certainly that's got to be the priority. But the one thing, and you and I have talked about this a bunch, they were incredibly lucky that Taylor Martinez survived the year. He took a lot of hits. The guy's playing style and the way that he runs the ball, he's going to take hits. And I think that's one of those things that if you're in week 4, week 5, and you haven't given some time to that backup, and then something, God forbid, happens to Taylor Martinez, you're in a pretty bad way.
You're definitely in trouble. And Coach Beck, he kind of said that, it would be a hard situation. He did say the one thing they would have working for them, which I kind of agree with, is that offense is very upperclassmen heavy. And he said, we would be able to rely on guys like Kenny, Quincy, Amir, even Jamal Turner and the offensive linemen a little bit more this year with a backup quarterback than we would in most years.
Talking here to Josh Harvey of BigRedReport.com. You can follow him at Josh Harvey Scout on Twitter. And Josh, what about the format of the event? I really liked it. I thought some of the drill work that they did that broke up the game was a good idea. Obviously, Jack Hoffman's play from scrimmage is just an amazing moment that'll be captured and immortalized. I mean, I don't think I'm overstating it by saying that's one they'll be playing 20 years from now. And certainly the way it's caught fire nationally has brought attention to the program at a time when really I can't imagine anything else coming out of that spring game that would have raised the eyebrows of anyone outside of Nebraska.
No, I know they weren't thinking about this, but what a great PR campaign. I mean,
right.
What great promotion. I mean, they've gotten probably millions of dollars worth of mentions and advertisement for their school and their football program, and that wasn't the point. I'm not saying that, but I mean, that's something you can't pay for. And so, great job for everybody who thought that up, and just a great job for thinking it up because, that's what needed to be done. That was a magical moment. But I thought all the other, drills and stuff that they did in the game, I thought it was very creative because not only are you trying to entertain the fan base, which let's face it, the second half of a spring game can get pretty dull, but I thought it was probably good for TV as well because you probably had some recruits watching. You definitely had some fans watching. You probably had some people across the country watching just because they're trying to get their college football fix, and it's still early in the spring, and so it kind of probably kept the TV audience a little more entertained. I know I would have been more entertained watching it on TV, and so credit goes out to everybody, the marketing team in Nebraska, Bo Pelini. I think credit goes out to him as well, and I thought that was a really nice job they did on Saturday.
Yeah, it's something that, it shouldn't be lost on any fan that at the college and pro level, everything about football now is a made-for-TV event, whether it's the combine, the draft, you look at pro days, you look at signing day in college, and now spring games, and especially in places like Nebraska, you could turn that into an all-day football festival, and I don't think fans could possibly get enough.
I worried about Bo Pelini having a camera in his face the whole game, though. Did you see that? I mean, they had the camera literally down by his knees, pointing up to him pretty much the whole game. I was a little worried for that camera guy, but he made it. Well,
I'll tell you what, I've got notes on that, and I may not even have time to get to it today. I may have to wait on it until tomorrow's show, but I think we're seeing something. We're seeing something happen with Bo Pelini, and I've been saying it now for a couple of months as that maturation as head coach kind of takes hold, and I think there have been some pulse points throughout the course of this offseason where we've seen Bo change things a little bit and open up in ways that he hadn't before.
Yeah, I would definitely agree, and credit goes to him for doing that change a little bit. Credit goes to, any sort of agent or anybody whispering in his ear. I think his image has definitely, changed in the last 6 to 12 months, and I don't think it was as bad as a lot of people want to make it out to be. I think it's a lot different when you're a player, when you're a staff member under him. But I think, the general perception, the perception on TV has probably changed over the last 12 months for Coach Bo Pelini.
Well, and he can continue in that direction. I think it'd be all good news for the program. Josh Harvey, BigRedReport.com. You can read his stuff there. You can also follow him at Josh Harvey Scout on Twitter. Josh, always good to catch up. Let's talk again soon, bud.
Hey, not a problem. Talk to you later.
Josh Harvey, Big Red Report and BigRedReport.com. Still to come, Chase Williams, Action 3 News, John Borton, TheWolverine.com, Rich Kuipers, Omaha World Herald. All of that's got to wait until we get to the big dogs next.